Hello. I want to do something a little bit different today. I'm going to read you a section from my new book, The Performance Illusion. It's out on Amazon by John Dean. So chapter 3, Leadership Theory's Blind Spot. Leadership theory occupies a privileged position in modern organisational life. When things go well, leadership is credited. When things go badly, leadership is questioned. Between those 2 points sits an entire industry of models, styles, frameworks, assessments and development programs. The underlying assumption is rarely examined, that leadership is primary causal force behind organisation performance. So this chapter argues that the assumption is flawed, not because leadership is unimportant, but because leadership theory constantly looks in the wrong place for explanations. The behaviour first assumption. Most leadership theories start with behaviour. They ask how leaders should act, communicate, influence, inspire, or adapt. Performance is then explained as the result of those behaviours, being present or absent. If outcomes are good, leadership was effective. If outcomes are poor, leadership must improve. This logic is appealing because it's simple and personal. It offers clear levers: training, coaching, feedback, and that fits neatly with the idea that organisations succeed or fail because of the people at the top. What it largely ignores is the condition of the system those people are operating in. So why does leadership explanation feel right? So leadership narratives feel convincing because they are human-centred. Stories about individuals are easier to tell and easier to believe than explanations about structure, constraints, or system design. They also align neatly with the performance illusion described earlier. When people compensate for a weak system, their behaviour becomes far more visible and more consequential. Leaders appear decisive, managers appear heroic, teams appear resilient. Leadership theory steps in and claims these behaviours as causes, when really they're often responses. The system struggles, people adapt, leadership is credited. Causality runs the wrong way, but the story feels right. So the blind spot, compensation, is mistaken for capability. Leadership theory struggles to distinguish between 2 very different things. Capability created by good design and capability created by human compensation. Both can produce results, but only one is sustainable. When a system is poorly designed, leaders are forced to intervene more often. Decisions escalate upwards, exceptions multiply, direction must be repeated, energy increases. From the outside, this looks like strong leadership. From inside, it often feels exhausting. Leadership theory praises the visible behaviour without asking the uncomfortable question. Why is so much leadership effort required in the first place? So why does leadership development often disappoint? Many organisations invest heavily in leadership development and are puzzled when results don't follow. New language is introduced, behaviours are modelled, values are reinforced, workshops are delivered, and for a while energy increases. And then the old problems return. And this is not because leadership development is useless, it's because it's frequently applied to the wrong problem. Teaching people to lead better does not remove structural contradictions, unclear priorities, overloaded constraints or broken flow. It simply equips people to compensate more skillfully. Over time, this can make the system appear healthier than it is, delaying necessary redesign and increasing long-term fragility. Styles don't fix systems. Transformational, servant, situational, authentic. The list of leadership styles grows each decade. Each offers a different lens on how leaders should behave in relation to others. What they share is an implicit belief that better interaction produces better outcomes, regardless of systems conditions. But no leadership style can resolve conflicting priorities embedded in structure, eliminate chronic overload, remove ambiguity designed into processes, and reconcile demands that exceed capacity. When these conditions exist, leadership style becomes a coping mechanism, not a solution, and this is the key thing. The moral hazard of praising resilience. One of the most damaging consequences of leadership-first thinking is the moral hazard it creates. When people are praised for resilience, adaptability and grit, the organisation receives a signal that the system does not need to change. The burden of viability is transferred from design to behaviour. And this is rarely intentional. It's often framed as support or appreciation, but the effect is the same. Structural weakness is normalised. The more resilient people become, the easier it is to ignore why that resilience is required in the first place. Leadership as amplification, not origin. A more accurate way to think about leadership is this. Leadership amplifies system conditions, it does not create them. In a well-designed system, leadership effort is subtle. Decisions are rare, direction is clear, intervention is minimal, performance appears calm. In poorly designed systems, leadership effort is constant. Decisions are frequent, direction is repeated, intervention is necessary, and performance appears intense. Leadership theory tends to celebrate the second scenario precisely because the behaviour is more visible. And this is the blind spot. So why does this matter then for organisations that appear to work? The most dangerous place for leadership theory to mislead is in an organisation that appears successful. As long as the results are acceptable, the cost of compensation is hidden. Leadership behaviours are reinforced. Structural questions are postponed. Growth, complexity or shock eventually expose the fragility. At that point, leadership is blamed again, this time for failing to foresee what was structurally inevitable, and the cycle repeats. A quieter definition of effective leadership. If leadership is to be understood more honestly, the role must be reframed. Effective leadership is not primarily about motivating, inspiring or influencing. It's about refusing to allow people to compensate indefinitely for structural weakness. It's about reducing the need for heroics, removing contradictions rather than managing around them, designing conditions where ordinary effort produces reliable outcomes. This form of leadership is less visible, less dramatic, and less easily celebrated. It does not generate stories, it generates stability, and that's why it's so often overlooked. So what's the blind spot? So leadership theory's blind spot is not accidental. It protects organisations from having to confront uncomfortable truths about their own design. It's easier to develop leaders than to redesign systems. Easier to coach behaviour than enforce constraints. Easier to celebrate effort than remove the need for it. Leadership theory offers a language that allows organisations to remain unchanged while appearing to improve. When leadership is used to explain performance, it's often being asked to account for failures along the system. Recognising that distinction is essential if organisations are to move beyond the performance illusion and towards something more durable. Thank you.